Welcome back from break. In section 1, we talked about how important coaching and feedback is. We also talked about communication and how critical it is for coaching and feedback to ensure itself with good communication. And so what do we mean by that? It's not necessarily what is delivered, but how it's delivered. Agree? Right, it's important, right? We've all been there. So in this section, section 2, we're going to talk specifically about the feedback model itself. We're going to look at the power of effective feedback, because if it's feedback, we talked about a little bit earlier, it does change behavior. If it's not, it's probably praise or criticism, neither of which helps us much. We're going to look at the feedback model itself. It's a 3-part model. It's very simple to use. It looks clinic when we first look at it, but it's very simple. And then finally, we're going to revisit opportunities for receiving and seeking feedback. Now, we did some of that earlier. If you remember, we did a brainstorming exercise with formal opportunities for feedback, performance reviews, individual objective meetings, and so on. We're going to also explore what are some day-to-day examples of where we can do informal feedback. All right? But to begin this section, I'm going to go to an exercise. And this exercise has this dramatic title called When Feedback Changed My Life. I don't want you guys to all worry about you're going to have to share some personal stories here. That's not the case. Think about a situation where feedback had an impact on you. It could have been somebody in your family. It could have been somebody at work. It could be somebody at the bus stop. Who knows, right? So to give you an example, for me, it was many years ago, obviously very many years ago, right? It was my first position right out of college. It was my first poly suit wearing, knit tie wearing. I thought I was a power consultant job. And this job happened to be in Chicago. And my first meeting with the supervisor was about a week into the course, or into our firm. And I thought I was doing very well as a new person. Was very shy, which is probably also hard to understand at this point. But he sat me down. He said, "Dave, you're doing a good job. Just a couple things. You're doing all that we ask you to do, but we need you to do some more." And I was thinking, you know, I went to school, I'm wearing this power suit, right? What else can I do? And the easiest way he could get it through to me was he talked about his son's soccer team, which, you know, at that time we didn't know a whole lot about soccer. It was, you know, rocket football or baseball, but today soccer is everywhere. We call it football, actually. He said his son, they have group ball, so they all kind of converge on the ball, and that when you're an inexperienced person, you tend to wait for the ball to come to you. And he said, "Dave, I need you to anticipate where that ball's going, and then I need you to meet the ball head on." So the impact to me was, okay, I'm not being scolded. This was actually a corrective feedback, but it gave me some positive results. And some of those results were, from that point on, I thought, I'm going to anticipate client needs. I'm going to prepare for the questions that clients have. And I'm going to make sure that I do that forward. So that was impactful. That was about, I hate to say how many years ago it was. It was a long time ago. So anyway, with that example, just think about what the situation was, who delivered it. It's easier to think about a person. And then what kind of impact did that have on you? In other words, how did it make you feel? Did it make you change your behaviors? Okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to think about that. If you have any questions, I'll be around to help you out. Okay, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I'm going to ask for 1 or 2 volunteers to share how feedback changed your life, okay? And again, this doesn't have to be something you're uncomfortable sharing, but those of you who would like to share, okay? Claire, what was your situation? Okay. So you were feeling overwhelmed, and I'm just recapping this for the group. You were overwhelmed at work and couldn't keep up with the pace, so you talked to your supervisor, and you didn't get the feedback you thought you would, right? You thought you were going to get a lesson workload, and you know, that's the side joke for all of us, right? Those of us who are good performers, and I'm not putting myself in that necessarily, but those of us who are good performers, what's your reward? More work, right? So you were getting more and more work, and your feedback from your supervisor was, "Gepo." What does Gepo mean again? It's Good enough, push on, right? Good enough, push on. So your supervisor was saying you were too much, if I can put it into your words, you were too much of an expert, too many details. And like she just said, do the work you can. It's 24/7. You can work the rest of your life. You'll never get your work done. It's good enough for me, and push on. So that made a change for you, right? Very good. All right, one more. Bill. So this one's a recent one, right? Okay, so you had an opportunity to travel in your career. It was going to be some extensive travel, but you also had to rate against your family, right? And that's pretty common for a lot of us. So what happened again? You went to your father, and your father said, he asked you a question. And the question was very simply, who loves you more? It's like fathers, we don't always expect them to solve our issues, but sometimes they can be tough on us. And so he meant, who loves you more, your family or your coworkers? And so it helped you modify what you're going to do in your career. You still took the assignment, right? But it was an assignment that had a limited duration, and you could go back to your other job. You did that, get that promotion, so good for you. All right, thanks so much. That gives you an idea, or gives us an idea rather, of how powerful feedback can be if it's done correctly. So let's step back and think about, what do we mean by feedback? Everybody's got a definition, and this is very critical that we have a very clear definition. And there's two. So feedback can be positive or it can be corrective. But in order for it to be effective, they must be constructive. Okay? So I'll say that again. Positive or corrective, but to be effective, it has to be constructive. So who has ever in this room, by show of hands, experienced praise? And what do we mean by praise? Attaboy, right? Good job. We all have. So what's wrong with that? Right. So maybe the first day you hear it, Bob, hey Bob, good job today. And you feel good, you're walking on the clouds, right? And then Bob hears, I get feedback from my supervisor, Dave, good job today. And you hear that same praise to everybody in the team, and pretty soon it loses its impact. Why is that? It's not tied to specific behavior, right? That's what we mean by constructive. It has to be targeted in a situation, and it has to show some kind of impact. And by impact, it doesn't have to change the bottom line of the business. We're not talking about great earth-shaking things with impact. But by impact, it can be to yourself, in your behavior, it can be to your teammates, it can be something, just maybe your errors lessened on your next agenda items. Maybe you do a little bit more proactive work like I did after my feedback. It can be very simple things. This is it's kind of a funny title. When I first went through this course, I thought emotional bank, what the heck is an emotional bank, right? But an emotional bank, think about, this goes with the balance of how many times do you receive on average positive feedback versus corrective feedback? And what do we experience a lot of times in our work histories, right? That's why we don't always feel comfortable giving or seeking feedback, because we tend to get the corrective feedback, or worse yet, the criticism. But this is the balance, according to research, and don't ask me to quote the study, but I did go to a behavior school back in Western Michigan, and we studied the schedules of reinforcement, B.F. Skinner stuff, right? And to give you a good example, the variable ratio schedule of reinforcement is what casinos use. And they're called slot machines, one-arm bandits. You sit there and over time, you're reinforced by bells or whistles or maybe a couple coins here and there, but it's hard to leave because you never know when you're gonna hit that big jackpot or not. I'm not saying that you guys have to be gamblers as supervisors or as peers, but think about the best way to get performance from people is to make them feel engaged, is to point out what they're doing well. It's how you grow new skills by shaping them into full development. You can only do that through positive feedback. You can't do that through corrective. You can eliminate behaviors through corrective feedback. So the ratio here is over time, and I know this is difficult, you should do an average of 3 positives to every corrective feedback, every half day, every week, on average, whatever that average is for you, because that's what's going to make it more effective. Just an aside, my wife and I are not really heavy gamblers, but we do occasionally go to the casinos in Missouri, and we made the joke that maybe next weekend we should just drive up to the Ameristar, throw out two $20 bills and go get a drink somewhere else, because that's our big payoffs with casinos. All right, so we talked about coaching in section 1. Now we're going to look at the relationship between coaching and feedback. So with this, you can see the definitions here. Let me ask a couple questions. All right, the first question is, can we deliver feedback without coaching? Think about it. Can you deliver feedback without coaching? No? Got another no? Got a yes? This is a simple answer, it's yes. You can deliver feedback without coaching. Now I have a converse question. Can you deliver coaching without feedback? Right. You can never deliver coaching without feedback, because feedback is an inherent component of coaching. It's in the coaching. It includes problem solving and action planning, where feedback only takes about 20 minutes, or sorry, rather 20 seconds. 20 minutes would be a long feedback session. 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Give you an example of that, right? I'll give an example with Claire. She came in, was working on her laptop furiously, checking emails, as we have other jobs to do than just this session today, right? And then when I gave the 1 minute warning for the break to be over, she simply, I have my little alarm system here for that. She simply closed her laptop . There we go. She simply closed her laptop in the middle, 1 minute prior to the session ending, just closed it gently. And what she did was she modeled behavior for everybody else coming in through the break. Everybody else followed suit, and we got break started on time. So that's an example. If we go back here. The situation was just coming back from break in this training session. The behavior, what Claire did was gently close her laptop just before the break ended. And the impact on everybody was that everybody followed suit and we got to start the session back on time. So it's positive. You could have one more component and say, thank you, Claire. And how does that make you feel? And Claire says, makes you feel good. So we'll keep at that. All right, so I mentioned constructive feedback is specific. Here's some examples of what descriptive feedback does. And here are some examples of non-descriptive feedback. So you can kind of look at the comparison back and forth. One of the biggest things here is that you're working in a business or an organization. You want the feedback to change behavior, desired behavior. You want somebody to learn something new, or you want people who have learned undesired behaviors to unlearn them, or have competing behavior take care of that. So you don't want, for example, a hostile work environment. You want to get rid of those behaviors very quickly. So let's do a little exercise. This one is an exercise of determining whether or not a statement that I'm about to read to you is descriptive or non-descriptive. And one more thing I'd like you to try to do is, if it's not descriptive, how might you change that statement to make it more descriptive? Okay, so you have a couple minutes to do that, and that's going to be in your workbooks on section 2, page 3, and looks like that. Okay, and I'll give you a couple minutes to look that over. All right, let's look at the first statement. You dominated the Q&A section of the meeting today. Is that specific or not specific? How many of you said specific? You're correct. Sorry, you're incorrect. Why is it not specific? What's the key word there that leads you to think it's criticism and not constructive? Right, dominated, right? So I don't know what dominated is. It's a label, it's not a behavior, so we can't do anything with it. So how might you change it? So When questions were asked during the meeting, you raised your hand and tried to answer every question, even interrupting other people in the meeting, the review meeting this morning. A little bit more specific, right? So it might be a little hard hitting, but the person knows what they did, what dominated means. We wouldn't use labels because what do labels do? Right, they make people defensive. All right, number 2, your agenda for this morning's meeting contained 3 deadlines that were not met. Specific, not specific? Right, it's more specific. We could tweak it a little bit more, but it's pretty specific. We have the quantifier 3 deadlines were not met. What's not really involved in this one is the impact. Was it the responsibility of that person to meet those deadlines, or was it responsibility of that agenda keeper to make sure other people met the deadlines? We don't know about the impact of them. Last one here. You asked a couple of good follow-up questions during the new product launch presentation today. As a result, the product team will include a supply chain representative in all future meetings. It's kind of wordy, right, but it's pretty specific. And in that case, the impact's a little bit clearer that we want to be involved in the product design meetings so that surprises don't happen down the way in the supply chain, right? All right, very good, well done. All right, so I mentioned this a little bit earlier. We are now going to think about some informal ways to use feedback at work, and we're not going to do a flip chart this time. Let's just do it as a large group, okay? So we have, and just again, as an example, these are formal situations for feedback. Somebody had mentioned was asking what a stretch assignment was. And a stretch assignment is something where maybe you have an opportunity to go overseas or go into a different function like marketing, and you're from supply chain, and it's maybe about 2-week duration to 6-week duration, and you try some new skills. And it might be to develop new skills, might be because you're a high potential, high performer, which I know all of you are that case. So informal, where do I start? Meetings, very good. So would you give your feedback to a peer or somebody during the meeting? No. Unless it's a big meeting and you're not disrupting it, right? It'd be as immediately after the meeting as soon as possible, because you want to do some immediate feedback. It could just be prior to the meeting, right? So meetings, very good. What else? Okay.